if I could only have 15 more yards to cut, if I could only build 10 more houses, if I could only train 30 more people, my life would be fixed. It's not true because those are external.
Right.
The way that we fix our life is internal. And so we miss the value of that, especially at a young age.
Yeah.
You know, people want the stuff. They want to look good. They want to look at the things. But really, do you meditate? Do you read? Do you get in the Word? You taking care of your soul? Do you have a budget? Are you going to the gym? So we can talk about anything you want. I'm an open book. How old are you?
I'm 25.
25 years old. And you went to what college you go to?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe there was a set of colleges.
I went to University of Wisconsin, and then COVID happened. I graduated from Arizona State online.
What were you studying?
I graduated with a degree in health science.
Okay.
But I was exercise science and then dietetics and then overall health sciences.
Just because like fitness and health seemed like something that you wanted to be involved in some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, I was
because you enjoyed it.
I was an athlete,
Right.
so I went down that whole road of like.
You're like, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's like when guys go to college and they get a degree in criminal justice. I'm a guy and I got like a high and tight, so I might as well be a cop. Because I started out in that.
Really?
So that's
Okay.
what I started out my degree in, was criminal justice. And then a buddy of mine was like, you don't have to have, if you want to go be a cop, you don't have to have a degree in criminal justice. And so I got a degree in construction management and business.
Okay.
Which was a much better choice.
Okay.
But path that I didn't necessarily, I wanted to go down it, but I also wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I think it's really challenging kind of the economy and the world that we live in with social media and the opportunities that kind of arise out of that for entrepreneurship. Like how old are your parents?
50, early 50s.
So my parents, you know, they grew up in that era where it was like, go get a job, go to college, get a retirement, get that health insurance, you know, smile, take your kids to the ball game. And then that was really what was expected of us from our because that's what our grandparents did after like World War II. This was a long time ago. I don't know if this is the 20-something podcast.
We have all sorts of listeners.
World War II, you know, that was a long time ago. Don't forget about those people. But they came home from that and they wanted a steady job, so they went to work in plants. And so then, like, my parents did the same thing. And then that was, hey, go to college, get you a job with a company. You're going to get retirement and all that health insurance. But then companies started doing away with retirement. Companies started doing away with health insurance. And now all of a sudden you're like, why are we all here?
Yeah.
And then they want you to work 800 hours a week for the same kind of pay.
No.
And it's like, what am I doing? You know? And that career, I spent about a decade of that, kind of rising to the top. And it was really great. I was in construction management, did some industrial stuff like hydroelectric power plants, really cool projects. Then got into like resort development.
Oh, cool.
Golf courses and that kind of fun stuff, and helped some developers do some acquisitions and that kind of stuff. So got to be around a lot of high performance people. And I started seeing people like show up in the helicopters. And I'm like, that's a different level of person. Like, so I asked the guy, and it was actually an owner had flew a contractor to fix his deck on his lake house in his helicopter from Atlanta.
Dang.
And I'm standing there and I'm like, there's different teams to this whole thing. And I'm like, I want to be, I don't want a job. I want to be the guy that has the helicopter that flies
Yeah.
other, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still got the picture on my phone because it was kind of a transformational moment for me where I'm like, I don't know who I ran into, but obviously somebody smarter than me.
Yeah.
So I started just asking questions and being in the right rooms. But eventually they eliminated my position right after about a decade. And I'd been through a couple different companies, and there's a whole different career journey there, but, or story. But after about a decade, I got eliminated the week before Christmas, 2019, December 17th. Right. I got a wife, I got a kid. We just bought a nice big house with a heated pool.
Dang.
And I thought like career was happening.
Yeah.
No. And so I realized this myth of job security.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, I need to take control of my own destiny. And I'm never going back. That was a good decision, but a very hard road to hoe.
Right.
So
what did that look like for you moving forward? Like, what was the route you were going to take? And
yeah. So I was familiar with real estate and construction. Right. So I knew that it needed probably fit in that. Like, I'm not going to go be a baker, you know, like something kind of totally off kilter. Or I'm not going to go build something complicated. So I started a home inspection company, and then COVID happened, right? My marketing, now keep in mind, I had not been an entrepreneur before I had a job, so I had to figure this out. So I'm pretty good with people. So I'm like, I'm going to drive around and go to real estate offices and just talk to people. Well, they closed all the real estate offices. So I couldn't drive around. I couldn't talk to anybody. So now I'm like, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, all right, well, I've always wanted to get my real estate license. I'll get my real estate license. My wife had hers. She referred a few deals out to South Carolina. She's in North Carolina.
Okay.
And we live on the state line. And so I was like, well, I'll just get my real estate license. I've always wanted to. I got time. Right. And then during COVID, they were like, you can take it online. And I was like, oh, okay. So did that. And then had an opportunity to go to work for a real estate firm coaching other agents just because I love working with people, and they hired a coach for me. And so when I had somebody basically sit down and create a real estate roadmap for me of how to make six figures and work for myself, I was like, all right, I'm going to make more money than I used to make in my job. And I had a mentor to help me do that. And I did. And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then the economy was going on fire in real estate. And so we did really well. And that's how I got into basically self-employment.
Gotcha.
Right. As an entrepreneur.
Okay. Is that so what you do now?
Partially, yes. But also no. So doing well in real estate and having a large business background, right? Like project management business, when you're running a $20 million project, you've got to keep up with balance sheet, P&L, project schedules, all kinds of stuff, the finances of it. And so I started coaching small business owners. And meanwhile, I became an alcoholic in that whole process. And there we can talk about that too. I told you before, I think we got started, like I've made my fair share of bad choices, right? So we can talk about that. So I started coaching small business owners because they lacked the business management piece and the project management piece. Like, might have a skill set. Had a guy reach out to me one day on Facebook. He's like, hey, will you coach me? And I was like, yeah, I would. Plus I had been through some things personally as a man and a husband and a father and overcome them. And I shared that story, and he knew that and was working through some things. And so able to help him personally, but also in business.
Yeah.
And so started coaching people, then started coaching more people. And then I started using basically my real estate sales to start and invest in other business opportunities. Okay. And so I started this company called Contract Commander. And I have another partner in a company called Hat Tags. We've got a few other things going on too. But now we're building different companies. We have teams of people, and it's really cool and really crazy and also kind of scary.
Yeah.
I got into some real estate, investment stuff myself. And so it's been an interesting thing. It's been a wild journey. I've gone from being kind of in project management and business management for other people to surviving real estate sales and learning how to do that and deal with people and learning sales skills to helping grow a few other $1 million businesses and get those people to be physically fit and powerfully present with their, children and their wives and whatnot. And I've even coached some women too.
Yeah.
To building what we're building now, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's super cool.
So, yeah.
Would you say that, this is kind of a different tangent, but would you say that real estate investment is kind of where the money's at right now? I feel like my age of people, everybody's like, I want to figure out how to invest in real estate. And then everyone's like, well, what's that? And how do we do that? And is that the right thing to do? So what are your thoughts on that?
Sure. So I got a lot of thoughts on that because it's really frustrating. All these BS nonsense courses that people sell on the internet about, hey, go buy my $5,000 course and you'll be a real estate investor in 60 days and you'll make $100,000.
Right.
This is not how that works. That is all BS and nonsense. So watch out for that stuff, right? Real estate is the number one thing that transfers or creates wealth on the planet. That's one of the statistics I think might still be, but real estate is one of the number one thing usually that can change someone's life financially. So it is possible.
Right.
However, in most things in life and business, people struggle because they never go do. You got to get in the game.
Right.
And there's a lot of bad advice on how to get in the game. And so you got to find the right people to help you avoid throwing away time and money. And a lot of people, they just want to talk about it.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to do these things. And it's like, at some point you've got to jump off the boat and see if you could swim. Real estate investing is a phenomenal thing. But it is risky, and you need to be around the right people to help you navigate that. And there's good and bad ideas around real estate investing. There's wholesaling, there's flipping, there's short-term rentals, there's long-term rentals, there's commercial, there's all kinds of stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that was going to be my question, is like, what essentially is real estate investment? Is just buying and selling properties? Is it owning property? Like, if someone were to be like, this is what I'm interested, cut and dry, like, what would you kind of explain it as to somebody who like an idiot? No, they've never
So
heard of it
any
before.
any investment strategy, no matter what you invest in, doesn't matter if you invest in chairs or tables or a podcast, you should have an end result that adds value to your life, right? So that value can be impact or that value can be monetarily. So if you look at real estate investing, you want to acquire assets for a return, right? You want to buy something basically and figure out, okay, is this thing going to have future value or is it going to have cash flow? Because it's two different things. And so real estate investing, you can focus on cash flow, which is like monthly return. Let's say you buy something and it costs you $1,000 a month, but you're making $1,500. Now you have cash flow of $500 a month.
Right.
Or you buy something and it has no cash flow every month, but you hold on to it for 3 years. You bought it for 300 grand. Now it's worth 500 grand. And there's some other math to that, but
Right.
theoretically now you've made $200,000,
Right. Okay.
if that helps.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess at it, like in the 20s, do you feel like that's a good point in, I mean, it's different for everybody depending on where they're at, but I feel like there's a lot of talk around like get in early.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Like at 25, should that be like a goal of somebody's?
So I think goals are okay. Really what I do encourage people to learn is clarity. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But as far as getting into real estate investing, you have to ask yourself how, right? You got 100 grand?
Nope.
How you going to get into real estate?
Exactly.
You got 10? It's like, okay, so how do you get into real estate investing?
Yeah.
For me, myself, if you get into a sales opportunity, if you get into a sales position, I don't care if you're selling shoes, roofs, solar, real estate, chairs, cups of coffee, whatever. If you get into sales, live below your means and use the difference to start saving towards real estate investing. If you own a home, you can use your HELOC, right? There's a home equity line that you can take out if you have equity inside of your home. There are people like Grant Cardone that say don't ever buy a home. You know, don't ever. I disagree with that because if you buy a house right now, well, how did you say 25? 25 years old. So if you go buy a house, you use your W-2 JOB and you go buy a house and you live in it for 4 years. Let's say now you're 29. Let's say that house. Let's say you bought it for $250. Let's say it's worth $450. Now you've got $200,000 plus the money you've paid down on it. So you've got some equity in that house. You can borrow that equity and go put it down on a real estate investment, right? So now all of a sudden you've got $200,000 to spend. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And guess what? You didn't have to go save it. So there's a lot of different strategies that you can do for things. But if you take that opportunity and you compound it with also living below your means, right? Which most young people don't have a budget. You have a budget?
I do.
Okay, good. Good for you. Most people, it's like they want to pretend like everything looks great, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
They're going out to halls on Friday night. They're going out to these games. They're buying this. They're look at me on Instagram. Nobody cares.
No.
I promise. Literally nobody cares. But like building wealth
Right.
is different than what it looks like on the internet. There's a book called The Millionaire Next Door. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
You should read it because it talks about the lifestyle of most millionaires and what that really looks like in real life. Great book.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll have to pick that up. Yeah. I like to talk about that here because I mean, I feel very privileged that my parents taught me a lot about money and I'm pretty well set up with like processes and stuff, but not a lot of people had that. And I feel like at this age, especially with social media, like you said, everybody's kind of out there like, oh, look at this. And then nobody has any money or knows where to go or how to invest or how to save. And I wanted to ask you about what you said with rent versus buy and how you kind of don't. I'd like to hear your opinion on that because I mean,
Sure.
I rent right now. I thought about buying about a year ago and then kind of decided not the best time for that. But what's the conversation around that? Like rent versus buy and what's better?
Sure. So I'm mentioning the word clarity, right? You heard me talk about that. I think it depends on what you really want out of life, right? Because once you buy a home, you're married to that thing. You do have to fix it. You got to work on it. You got to mow the grass. You got to maintain it. You got to paint it. You got to fix the air conditioner or whatever. Rent, you don't. So you kind of got to determine what you want that to look like. I don't think either one may necessarily be better than the other. I think it depends on what you want to do in life. However, I'm a fan of buying versus renting because real estate never goes down in value. Rarely, right? There may be some market corrections, but if you live in something for 5 years or 10 years, it's going to be worth more than you paid for it.
Right.
Just ask your parents or your grandparents, right? You're like, hey, mom, dad, hey, grandma, how much was that house when you were a kid? It was $9,000.
Right.
What's it worth now? $750. You know, it's like, okay, so yeah, when you were 8 years old, you should have been buying real estate.
Right.
There's a meme going around the internet, and it's like a picture of this kid in the 8th grade, and it's like me eating my Lunchable instead of buying real estate like I should have been. So yeah, buying, I'm a fan of that.
Okay.
It needs to make sense. You should buy for the right reasons,
Right.
not because it looks cool, right?
Right.
Like, have a game plan. And that's why I talk about clarity, because some people buy a house and they over leverage themselves, right? They're house poor is what it's called. And it's like they did it for status. But if you buy smart, right? Always look for a deal. One of my rules, I got to buy it on sale. I got to get a deal, right? That's just what it is. Even my primary residence, I'm like, I got to be able to get that thing. I got to get it on deal. Because I know that I have access to the future value of that property, so I can borrow against it. And now I've got access to cash,
Right. Right. Okay. That makes sense.
you know?
All right. So shifting gears and kind of going back onto like your timeline, your trajectory, you mentioned that you were originally criminal justice,
Yep.
wanting to be a police officer. Did you end up going down that route?
No, I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
So I was a crew chief in the Air Force and the reserves. And I just enjoyed the discipline and the structure of that type of environment. Had some friends, and family members who were in law enforcement. And I thought, man, that looks really cool. Like it looked like a lot of fun. Like I'm a type A adrenaline guy. I want to jump off the roof. I want
Right.
to fly helicopters and do all those kind of fun things. So I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, it seems like a great, and I would watch Cops as a kid. And I'm like, yeah, I want to do that, you know?
Yeah.
But I also realized it didn't pay enough.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I want to do things in life, and that's just not going to afford me the lifestyle that I want.
Right.
So,
Okay. So from there, where was the transition to?
so I shifted my degree to not criminal justice, to construction management and business with a
Okay.
minor in business.
Okay.
I knew that I liked building things. My dad was an engineer. They were always really handy. They built stuff. And so I knew that I liked reading drawings and all that kind of stuff. And then I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed project management and the business management stuff.
So while you were working in construction management, project management, did you always kind of have in the back of your head that you'd want to be an entrepreneur one day, or was it kind of just like something that fell in your lap when your position got eliminated?
It's that it fell in my lap when
Yeah.
my position got eliminated.
Yeah.
So we talk about like when you're young, you have to have it all figured out. Oh, I know I'm built to be. No, I wanted to be the vice president of a construction company.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to rise through the leadership and, you know, have the nice truck and have the job and have, you know, all the stuff. Hey, we built this building and I get to carry the big scissors kind of thing, you
Yeah.
know? So no, I didn't really know that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I fell in love with the concept of business stuff. I really was challenged that day. That guy flew that helicopter up there. I wondered,
Yeah.
and that really was more of business ownership rather than just entrepreneurship.
Right.
But no, it's not something that, you know, I knew. When I was a kid, I cut grass. I worked since I was 12. I got a
Right.
job. When I was a kid, I did knock on my neighbors' doors and ask if I could mow their yards.
Nice.
So even as a kid, I was like, I got to get paid.
Yeah.
You know, I want toys.
Okay. So when that did fall into your lap and you decided to take that route, what would you say was like the most challenging part of getting into that, or maybe a couple parts? Because I feel like entrepreneurship is kind of glorified right now, but it's not what everybody chucks it
not.
up to be.
No.
It's definitely not. I mean, long term, and if that's what you want out of life, always worth it, in my opinion, but definitely not easy. And there, I feel like for me, sometimes there are days where I'm like, man, I just wish I could have a 9 to 5 and my brain shuts off at 5 p.m. like my roommates, and we can just sit in the living room and watch TV, but that's just like not it, you know?
I have days like that too.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I'm going to work at Lowe's.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing it. You know, I'm done.
Yeah.
So you still have those days. What was the question?
Like the parts that you maybe weren't aware of, or the challenging parts.
Definitely. So you have to throw pride out the window, right? That's a tough one because I had a good job and I had to start selling my stuff because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, which means I had to pay my bills for a certain period of time before I could really pay my own bills. And so I had a Shelby GT500. I had to sell it, right? It was paid for. I was like, I need to stack some money back in the bank because if I'm going to last for the next year while I figure this thing out, then I'm going to have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And when you start selling your stuff, people start asking you, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm not okay. Right. And it's okay to not be okay. So I think like beating your chest and having pride is probably one of the biggest weaknesses that cause people to fall early in entrepreneurship, because they they tell themselves a story that things are better than they are. Mm-hmm. Even when you get into entrepreneurship and you're looking at the math and you got $100,000 in the bank, you're going broke, right? You don't go spend it. It's like, no, it's a bad idea. But people tell themselves stories that things are doing better than they really are. Mm-hmm. So that was a big one. I had to throw that out the window, but I struggled with that because I was like, look at me, I made it, and I got this stuff and these things. And all of a sudden it's like, I'm starting over.
Right.
But also that keeps us from asking for help, right? Pride. It's like, ask for help because you don't know what you're doing. I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah. There's still days I still don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I have people around me even still that, that are mentors or coaches or people that are smarter or wiser than me. And I would say that's a big piece of the puzzle too. Find people to be around who are really well at what you want to do, right? So when I got into real estate as a real estate agent, a mentor, he told me, he said, find top agents, get them on the phone, buy them coffee, take them to lunch, figure out what are they doing, what works. Don't pretend to have it all figured out. Look at me in my suit on Facebook and my Facebook page, and I got a business card and I'm a realtor, right?
Yeah.
No. You get humble and you go find people who are really good at it and you ask them for help. So throw pride out the window and ask for help. Yeah,
I like that. How old were you when this happened?
That was 2019, so 33. Yes, I'm 38 now. Is that 6 years ago? Yeah.
Okay. So what did those first couple of years look like?
They were hard.
Yeah.
They were really hard.
Yeah.
They were hard for a lot of reasons. They were hard because I didn't have the structure anymore, so I had to figure that out for myself. Freedom can be dangerous, right? So that was tough. The motivation piece wasn't hard because I wanted to get paid, right? And I'm real simple. So if you know how to tell me to get paid and I ask you and you tell me, then that's all I need to go do. So that piece wasn't complicated. The pride piece again was hard to get out of my own way because I grew up when I was a kid, I was bullied a lot. A lot of people didn't believe in me when I was a kid and that kind of stuff. And so that led to a lot of self-confidence issues. So most of my life, I tried to prove a point. Even in my career, I was like, I'm going to be the president of the company. Right. Because I want to prove it.
Yeah.
Right? I want to have the stuff. I got the boat. I got the Harley. I got the car. I got the house. I got the thing. Look at me. And so I had to start to deal with that false identity inside of myself, because in order for us to be powerful entrepreneurs or business owners, we got to get out of our own way. I think that's one of the biggest things that breaks us. Those were all struggles and challenges. And then the freedom led to me drinking every day. Right. Because I had a lot of things. I mean, I was carrying a lot and I had a lot of baggage and thoughts and emotional things that I hadn't dealt with because I had a job. It was easy.
Right.
And so that freedom, I don't have to report to anybody. I ain't got no HR department. And in business, a lot of people get together and drink anyway. So it just became part of culture.
Okay.
And that led to other issues in my life.
Right. Do you feel like that affected at all the progress that you were making towards like your businesses and that venture?
No, because
No?
I was really good at just pushing through, but it affected my marriage and my relationship with my daughter.
Okay.
So there was a different expense to that
Right.
section of my life. Business, I mean, I could wing it pretty good. You know what I mean? Like that. Plus the market was going crazy. I mean, people were like throwing money in the streets to buy houses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. So how long did it take you to kind of get set on your feet where it wasn't like, oh shit, is this going to happen or not?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah. It usually takes about 2 years to get through that season of your phone's ringing instead of you having to ring other people.
Right.
The goal is entrepreneurship is about endurance. It's an endurance race. You're not in a hurry. Everybody's always in a hurry. Got to get it done. Got to get it done. I'm like, bro, it takes 2 years for you to identify yourself in any kind of market as the person.
Right.
You're the personal trainer guy. Okay. You're the real estate guy. Okay. You're a contractor. Oh, you're a painter. You're a landscaper. You sell cupcakes on Main Street, whatever it may be. It takes about 2 years for people to really go, even in your church or your small groups or your organization or wherever you kind of, even in the gym, right? I got a lot of clients from the gym. First real estate client came from the gym.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. It's a
Pretty
good
cool.
networking space.
It is a great networking space.
Yeah.
And everybody's already kind of like of a like mindset.
Yeah.
So I love networking in the gym.
Yeah.
But it takes about 2 years.
Okay. What would you say are some of the most important things to be focusing on in those 2 years or to be doing to make sure that it doesn't take more than 2 years?
Take more than 2 years.
Yeah.
Net revenue,
Okay.
right? If you're running a business or building a business, focused on net revenue. Now, sales is a little bit different because you're earning a commission and you're just getting paid. But having a budget, managing your finances, right? Taking care of yourself, because at that point you become the machine that's producing your paycheck. Mm-hmm. And so at some point it will cost you something if you don't. Even myself, even in that season of drinking every day and being an alcoholic, at some point, I mean, and it caught up to me, right? I started physically noticing it, and it did impact my ability to meet with people, right? Because I was shaky if I wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
And so couldn't drink a cup of coffee. I'm like, and so I started to realize some of the physical symptoms, but take care of the machine, because that's you. Take care of your mindset.
Yeah.
Personal development is how you become valuable in life in any marketplace. And we often overlook that. We're like, I need to go sell more. If I could only have 15 more yards to cut, if I could only build 10 more houses, if I could only train 30 more people, my life would be fixed. It's not true, because those are external.
Right.
The way that we fix our life is internal. And so we miss the value of that, especially at a young age.
Yeah.
People want the stuff. They want to do good. They want to look at the things. But really, do you meditate? Do you read?
Right.
Do you get in the Word? You taking care of your soul? Do you have a budget? Are you going to the gym? How far can you run if you had to? And it's like, oh, yeah, I forget about all those things. So take care of yourself.
Yeah, I think that's super valuable. Everybody that comes on this podcast has some sort of regimen where their health comes first before anything else. Because, I mean, if you're not healthy physically or mentally, you can't really give your full effort to anything else.
No, you can't, especially the mental piece. And there's so many things out there trying to talk you out of it. Marketing the food that we eat, the things that we listen to, the music, all that kind of stuff. Personal development. I heard somebody talking about it on a podcast earlier this week. They were like, that's literally how you become valuable as a human. And we miss that, I think. It's not how many degrees you have.
Right.
It's not about, did you get straight A's? That terrific kid sticker on your mom's car doesn't matter, right? It doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't. But we're sold that, and it's ingrained in our lives that we have to do good.
Yeah.
But we forget to take care of ourselves.
I think that's such a valuable thing to make a priority in your life coming out of school as well, because that's definitely not something that I was ever super familiar with while I was in school. And
even being an athlete.
Yeah. Even being, I mean, I grew up in a small town, and it was like, we weren't ever in the weight room. Like, we were never really having those kind of talks about mindset. And so I never really learned about that until like my last year of college. And then I feel like that was such a big transition for me, figuring out who I am and what I value in life, is diving into that personal development and reading books and learning stuff outside of the standard stuff that they teach you in school, because they don't teach you how to go run a business or be an entrepreneur, figure out what you want in life.
Figure out what you want to do. They just say you get a degree and get a
Yeah,
job. Get that job.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're like, well, shit. But
Yeah. Now what?
Yeah.
But what? Who am I?
Right.
I was
Yeah.
an athlete in college, and now who am I? I'm free.
Right.
I don't know why. I'm scared. Put me back in the cage.
I know. I did a whole episode on that a couple months out of school. I was like, I had all of these labels. Like, I was an athlete, and I was a student, and I was this, and I was this, and now I'm like,
Now I'm an adult.
now I'm just 22, and I don't know.
And I don't know what
and what else.
it's
you
like
know?
Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no. So I think personal development is super important. Now you have a podcast.
I do.
Tell me about that.
So real quick though, finishing up on the personal development piece.
Yeah, let's go for it.
It's not what you know, it's what you do with it. Okay, and that's really important, because so many people, they listen to podcasts, they read the books, they buy the courses, they do the thing. They do that piece, but they forget the action part. Dan Martell, which I don't know if you know who that is, you should follow him, he's a great dude. Okay. Very smart guy, physical, business, just all that. He said the other day on his podcast, he's talking about, it doesn't matter how much you know. You got to go out there and fail. That is the greatest. And Alex Hormozy was talking about this earlier this week too. Another great guy. I know you know who that guy is, probably. You got to get out there and you got to take action. You have to be willing to fail. You have to be willing to be embarrassed. You have to be willing for people to laugh at you. You have got to get all that shit out of the way. All those personal labels that you put on yourself, and be like, I'm going to go do it. And then you can't quit. That's why my bracelet says keep going. Because if you stay in that journey and you outlast people who get embarrassed and they quit, or they go broke and they quit. If you stay in there and you keep taking those steps day by day, you'll start to outpace everybody else. So,
Yeah.
you have a podcast, YouTube, iTunes, called the Kingdom Transformation Nation.
Okay.
And similar kind of setup where we get together and we just share stories. I love having people on there and listening to their journey in life.
Yeah.
You know? And so that's really the purpose of it. We talk about physical health. We talk about mental health. We talk about men's health. We talk about business. We talk about sales. We talk about strategies, similar kind of stuff.
Okay. What made you want to start a podcast?
So I started a podcast a long time ago, right? So I mentioned there's a decade of my life where I was doing business and having a job, right?
Yeah.
In that decade, there's a couple other stories, but one of those stories is I also went broke during that period of my life.
Okay.
Buying stuff because I was the stuff guy.
Gotcha.
Right? Needed all the stuff. Didn't care about, didn't have a budget, right? So we were broke living in a camper and I was making like 30 grand a year. And I'm like, I'm making less money than when I got out of college.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, it was a big problem for me because we're living in a camper and I'm like, I got a wife and a kid. We're in my in-laws driveway. And I'm like, this ain't it. I did not dream about this moment in my life. So I had to hire a mentor. His name was Brian Rose. Brian Rose was mentored by a guy named Dan Pena. And they have a whole mentoring program, but I didn't have the money. I put it on a credit card. I'm going somewhere with the podcast thing. So Brian has a podcast called The London Real. And so in the mentoring, I'm like, man, that's so cool. This is probably, what year was this? This is probably 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, 10 years ago, right? And I was like, I'm going to do a podcast. And people were like, what is that? You know, and they're like, and so I started it. It's called Carolina Live.
Okay.
Set up a studio in my home office. Audio content was terrible. Got it on iTunes. I didn't even know what I was doing. I was like, sweet. But it had no purpose.
Yeah.
And I was like, so we tried to fight through it and I realized the quality was terrible. So I stopped. And then, a couple years ago, going through the process of sharing my story and all that kind of stuff, I was like, I'm going to start the podcast again. Like I've done this and I'm going to do it better. Like I'm going to get in a studio and I'm going to pay to have it edited and I'm going to figure it out. And then I had a sponsor, right? So I made a Facebook post, found a sponsor, and he's like, we'll take care of it for a year.
Cool.
And so I was like, all right, let's jump in. Got in the studio, got it recorded, all that kind of good stuff. Content's better, all that kind of, can't beat a man in his own game. Hire a guy because you suck at it. Right? I suck at it. I suck at that stuff. And so I was like, I'm just going to commit to it and we're going to go for it and we're going to put it out there and we're going to record better content. And it's also great for reels. As a business person, you take any podcast that you get to do that's recorded professionally and you pop that YouTube link in and get reels edited out. You now have top level content and digital real estate is a real thing. So the other piece that's tied back into that is I heard Gary Vee and I heard, Brad Lee say, if you do 3 reels a day for 3 years, you'll be a millionaire. It's not complicated. 99% of people won't do 3 reels a day.
Right.
Nobody. So I was like, screw it. I'm going to do it. So yeah, it was the most horrible reels. It was trying to match the top content for the day. I'm singing songs. I'm doing dances. It was terrible.
Yeah.
And so when it came along for the opportunity to do the podcast again, I was like, this is going to be much better content.
Yeah.
And so it just it gives you digital real estate. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's very cool. So going back to when you were broke, living in a camper.
Yeah.
How'd you get out of that? You hired a mentor, but like, how did you get out of that?
I had to get over myself. Again, that's something I think that we struggle with. First off, I had to ask for help. I realized that something was wrong because I didn't dream about being broke living in a camper. Right? I wasn't a kid, and I'm like, man, I can't wait to get out of college and go broke and live in a camper with my wife and kid in my in-laws driveway.
Right.
I didn't write that down on my vision board.
Right.
So I had to ask for help. Meaning, okay, I had to realize like I was kind of in a low point in life. I was feeling sorry for myself, felt like a loser. I mean, kind of, I guess I was being a loser, right? But I could have either stayed there or I could have said, okay, what talents do I have? What am I really good at? Right. And I was really good at project management, but I was trying to buy a business and do some other things. I was in insurance too. And I was in a space that I didn't need to be in, right? Because it wasn't really what I was good at. So I was like, all right, I know what I'm good at. I'm going to start a business. So back when I was in another business in a project management, business management role, I had a friend of mine, his name was Ken, and he worked at the same company. Well, Ken became the CEO of another company, okay? So I'm like, I'm going to call Ken and tell him I want to start a business, but I need his help, right? So I call Ken up. I'm like, Ken, I want to start a resort property management company. He's like, all right, cool. You're really good at that stuff. I think it's a great idea. And I said, but I can't hire anybody to answer the phones.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like, so I drove to his office in Columbia and I sat with him and the owners of that company. And I pitched him a plan, right? I put together a presentation and I pitched him a plan about how I could use their office staff, right? And reimburse them somehow so that I could go start my business. Well, then they were like, well, you are really good at this. You want a job? And I was like, managing a resort. And I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. Cause now instead of going, and they told me what it paid and it was 3 times what I was making. And I'm like, I went home to my wife. I was like, I'm taking a job. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're going to have to move to South Carolina. And, that was a huge moment in my life. I had never tripled my salary in the matter of a few weeks. So that's how I got out of it.
Okay.
I had to look at my skill set and talent and then go to people smarter than me and sit down in a boardroom and have a meeting and present something that I believed in to somebody. And I believed in it enough to where they believed in me enough to put me like in a GM role.
Yeah.
Which was really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I went straight to the top.
Yeah.
So that's how I got out of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's such a perfect example of like, if you put yourself in the right rooms, in the right situations, the right opportunity is going to come.
For sure. Being in the right rooms, being around the right people. We're the
Yeah.
average of the 5 people we
Yes.
hang out with. But do you know how treacherous that drive to Columbia was inside of my head?
Sure.
Because I was broke, you know? And I'm like, I got to show up. I've got to show up and believe in myself.
Yeah.
And that was really hard.
Yeah. I think that's the hardest part for people in that realm, in that space, is like believing that it can happen, but like making sure that you actually believe it in your brain. Because I mean, for me, one of the hardest things has always been like, if I haven't seen it yet, it's so hard for my brain to be like, it's going to happen. And it's taken a lot of work, but I feel like that's very hard for most entrepreneurs in the beginning stages, is like, I want this so bad. I know I can have it, but do I fully really believe?
Do you really believe?
Yeah. Because if you don't, it's not going to happen.
If you don't, you won't fight the fight.
Yeah.
Because there's days where it is a fight, you know. I've had to have a lot of tough conversations, 7-figure negotiations and conversations with business owners about business deals and buying and selling real estate and business assets and that kind of stuff. And if I didn't believe in myself, I wouldn't be sitting here. But I heard somebody say that again. The people that you surround yourself with will take you with them because they require it. Right? They're like, listen, you can get your shit together. We're going on a journey.
Yeah.
Or you can't come with us.
Right.
So I heard a friend speak one time, and he said, you know, the number one job of an entrepreneur, what is that? To believe in yourself, right? It's hard.
Yeah.
Because if you believe in yourself and you believe in all the other things that God put inside of you, guess who else is going to believe in you? Everybody else, including a team of people, right? It's really hard to lead when you don't believe in yourself. And that's not, you know, it's not about being cocky. It's not about being prideful, but it's about being certain. Like, hey, here's what I'm good at, right? And you find people to surround yourself with that are good at the things you're not good at.
Yeah.
But you got to believe in yourself. That's why personal development
Yeah.
is so critical.
Yeah.
Right.
It always goes back to that.
Always go back to that.
Yeah. Okay. What would you say has been the most rewarding part?
The renewal of the relationship with my daughter. She calls me dad number 2 because
Really?
I'm so different.
Really?
Yeah. And my wife, I'm just very different in so many ways through the sobriety journey than I was before. And so that's the biggest part. And impact through coaching other business owners and helping them become more present with their families. Like, I've been able to be part of a process where I've been able to help like husbands and wives heal their marriage, and where I've helped husbands save their lives from suicide, right? And to where they're still present for their children. And I get pictures on Saturdays of dads hanging out with their kids. So those would be the most rewarding things.
Yeah.
Because that's
Cool.
priceless. And
Yeah.
you never know who you might be able to impact, you know,
Yeah.
when you believe in yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So to kind of like sum things together, if you were talking to like a young entrepreneur or somebody that's wanting to get in that space, where do they start? how do you kind of get into that realm if you're like, I know I want something more than this and maybe I want to pursue my own thing, but like, where the hell do I
Right,
start?
where-
Yeah.
out of all of the things
what do I
on
do?
Instagram,
Yeah.
where do you get
what
started?
Do I do? Yeah.
That's a great question, and a tough one. I think you've got to try a few things and fail before you really figure out what it is you really want to do or be a part of. But the number one thing I would say is ask somebody for help, because whatever field you want to go into, I don't care if you want to sell chairs or whatever it may be, or
Yeah.
widgets or landscaping, you go find somebody in your community that is a high performance in that business and you call them up. You say, hey, can I bring you coffee one day this week? And they're going to say yes,
Right.
because they care. That's what I would highly recommend. I had a young man call me probably 2 weeks ago talking about going to this conference and spending money to be in this arena full of people and high performers. Should I spend this money? And I said, no, you shouldn't. You should save your $5,000 and you should go buy every high performing entrepreneur in your community coffee, right? Because that's how you get
Yeah.
in the level with people.
Okay.
Being in those arenas, hype, motivation.
Right. Yeah.
Woo! I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to be a real estate investor. Totally worthless.
Yeah.
You got to jump off the boat, but there's people that'll help you swim. That's
Okay.
where I would start. And I would avoid all the nonsense BS on Instagram. There's a few people that things really show, they have the fruit, right? But there's a lot of people selling magical courses that they use Chat GPT to write, and they got a suit on, and it's not good.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many of those like build your business courses, especially in the fitness industry. The amount of
yeah.
DMs I get all the time of like, oh, we'll help you reach blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no.
We'll build your online business for you.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
will you?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Right.
And relationships. So your net worth is in your network, right? So relationships, and I could talk all day about marketing and all that kind of stuff, but
Right.
and I learned that from someone who's a billionaire. Again, I talk about fruit. When somebody gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with you and they're a billionaire, they are smarter than you, you get out your notepad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he told me relationships are the way, right? That's all it is.
Yeah.
Building the right relationship.
Yeah. Totally agree. Cool.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Let's see here. I'm sure I can come up with something.
Right.
Don't be afraid to fail. It's going to happen. Throw pride out the window. Pride keeps us from taking the lessons that failure wants to give us, because those days will come. Don't base your success off of financial success, right? Because money is a result, right? It's like abs. If you just chase abs, you're probably never going to get them. There's so much more that goes into that.
Yeah.
Calorie deficit, the food you eat, quality of food, all kinds of things. Same thing with money. If you chase money, it usually runs away from you. If you chase the process, money comes as a result. So throw pride out the window. Don't be afraid to fail. And don't just chase money, because that's a short-term thing.
Yeah.
And Zig Ziglar said it best. The greatest way to get what you want is to help other people get what they want. And you live life with that type of attitude and
Yeah.
mindset. Lean into your faith and who God made you to be, and you can change your entire world.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool. Can you plug your podcast again and like where people can
Yeah.
can find you, follow you, all that good stuff?
It's the Kingdom Transformation Nation.
Okay.
We're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and YouTube.
Okay.
So all the platforms.
All right. Well, I'll plug that for everybody, but thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Awesome. Yeah.